Hi there, and welcome to the Skylight Books author reading series. If you'd like to learn more about us and our many upcoming author events, please visit skylightbooks.com, where you can browse our inventory, buy books, and join our Friends with Benefits Club. You can also follow us on Twitter, Tumblr, and Facebook. To speak to a real live bookseller like me, please call 323-660-1175. Thanks for your support, and enjoy.
Today, we are so happy to have these two writers here. What will happen is they will come up here together. Sara will read a little bit. They'll interview each other. They'll talk with each other. And then we'll open it up for questions and answers. All right? So we're very happy to have Talia Gonzalez here. She's an actor and a writer who studied at New York Tisch School. That's Talia, yes. Welcome. She's been paying attention to her writing for MTV's Teen Wolf and iZombie for the CW. Sara Saedi. This is where you applaud wildly. Sara Saedi was born in Tehran, Iran, smack dab in the middle of a war and an Islamic revolution. First novel for young adults, Never Ever, was published in 2016, and its sequel, The Last Kids, was published in 2018. She has written for multiple TV shows, including The Goodwin Games and iZombie, and was awarded a Daytime Emmy for penning the ABC web series What If. She resides here in LA. With her husband. Is her husband here? Is your husband here? Yes. You know, I do always have to say, whenever the spouse is around, we have to acknowledge the spouse because living with a writer, I'm sure, is the pug.
Like so low key, so
And I also want to say that I've hosted over 1,000 events in Los Angeles, really. And since 2000, I don't think I've ever been to an event where they've actually served champagne here. So this is that's a big deal to serve champagne. So please welcome Talia and Sara.
Thank you. Hello. Can you guys hear me? So many friendly faces, and yet I'm terrified of all of you. I guess I'm going to read to get that part over with. And yes, here we go. Introduction. Puberty is the equivalent of guerrilla warfare on your body. Society commonly refers to it as the awkward phase, but I've always preferred to call it the everything totally sucks and I hate my life phase. I, for one, don't miss 1993. That was the year I naively thought my biggest problems were my underdeveloped breasts, the cystic acne that had built a small colony on my chin, and the sad fact that my prettier best friend and I had set our sights on the same guy. Would our friendship fall apart over a boy? Would I ever outgrow my training bra? Would my skin ever clear up? These were the dilemmas that kept me up at night. Side note, these are the dilemmas that still keep me up at night, so that's super sad. Except for the boyfriend part, luckily. I thought there was no way my life could get worse, but I was wrong. What seemed like a mundane afternoon would go down in history as the day my world crumbled. My older sister, Samira, and I were hanging out in the kitchen, probably dining on our favorite light Entenmann's coffee cake. I worked on my homework while Samira pored over job applications for a dozen or so retail stores at the posh Valley Fair Mall in our hometown of San Jose, California. San Jose, represent! Our parents owned a small luggage business about a 40-minute drive away, and they were never home before dinner time. And so the task of watching over my younger brother and me fell to my sister. But I was cool with that because, in my opinion, an older sibling had two primary reasons for existing. Sister, can you actually stand up and say hi to everybody? That's my sister. So she had two primary reasons for existing. Number one, expose their younger siblings to the harsh realities of the world. Number two, protect their younger siblings from the harsh realities of the world. She also got me high a lot. I told her I was going to say that. But this story covers number one. I don't think my sister derived any pleasure from blowing my carefully crafted reality to pieces, but maybe she couldn't handle being alone in her teen angst. My parents told her things they thought I was still too young to know, but I was nearly 13, and it was time I learned the truth about our family. It was time I learned the truth about myself, and it was her duty in life to be the one to break it to me. No one will ever hire me, my sister said, frustrated. I'm never going to get to make my own money. I wanted to tell her that as long as she could keep her somewhat problematic attitude in check during a job interview, I didn't think she'd have a problem finding long-term employment. Sure you will, I reassured her. You already have sales experience working at the luggage store. That's different. I worked for Mom and Dad. All the stores at the mall want a social security number, she vented. Just so you know, that's exactly what she sounded like. This is like a Meryl Streep caliber performance right here. At the time, I had never heard of the term social security number. So I asked. So I don't have one, she replied, and neither do you. Her response clarified nothing. Who cared if we didn't have social security numbers? We had a phone number and an address. What else did a person need to apply for a job? You're not getting it, Samira continued. The government doesn't know we exist. We could get deported at any time. I heard the words as they came out of her mouth, but my young mind didn't know how to process them. Deported? I had trouble reconciling the definition of the word with the fact that we'd been living in the Bay Area for 10 years. Like, they could send us back to Iran? Yes, she said. Even Kia? I asked. My brother was almost 5 years old then. He was objectively adorable. Why would anyone ever want to deport him? Kia? Right there? Yes? Still objectively adorable? No, my sister explained. He was born here. He's a citizen. That entitled brat. I glared at him, sitting in the next room, eating Oreos and watching Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, blissfully unaware that his sisters might get shipped back to the Islamic Republic. My anxiety tripled when Samira explained that not having a green card or a social security number also meant we were breaking the law simply by living in the United States. We're illegal aliens, she told me. This was before undocumented immigrant became the more commonly used and politically correct term. The words illegal aliens echoed through my head. Suddenly, hormonal acne and microscopic boobs paled in comparison to the revelation that I was a criminal. And apparently an alien. How would I explain this to my law-abiding human friends? They'd probably want nothing to do with me once they learned I technically wasn't allowed to be living in the country. If this got out, I could lose everything. But when my parents came home that night, they assured me that no one was going to deport us. We weren't criminals or extraterrestrials. We were trying to get green cards. It would all work out and no one would have to go back to Iran. So we won't have to leave America, I asked. Nah, Baba, my dad said to me. This sort of translates to, no way, Jose. But I wasn't exactly convinced. That night, when I went to bed, I was no longer worried about 8th grade love triangles or whether it was possible that Clearasil was just an elaborate scam that gave insecure teens like me false hope. I was worried what my life would look like if I had to say goodbye to my friends and move back to Iran. My Farsi was rusty at best. Being forced to wear a headscarf would only accentuate my bad skin. I'd already been living in the United States for a decade. How would I ever adjust? My sister's warning stayed with me like a refrain through the rest of my teen years. We could get deported at any time. There was only one appropriate reaction. Holy shit. That's it. So glad that's over.
Alright, now we're gonna get to the good stuff.
What?
Now it is. Okay. I'm going to channel my inner Oprah and hopefully ask some good questions. I'm honored to be here. Sara is a colleague of mine and a friend, and we've been working.
We're like best friends.
We're besties, basically.
We're like
yeah.
So super close.
We've been working together for 3 years, and she came to work with an advance copy, so I quickly snatched it up and.
I just walk around with advance copies.
And I read it, in one go, and I laughed and I cried and I laughed and I kept texting her, and it was such an amazing. I love Sara, and then to know about her in the teen years and her childhood, it made me want all of my friends to write a memoir so I could know about them before I met them. But my first question to you is, it's such a daunting task to write a memoir. There's so many stories from childhood and your teen years. How did you go about deciding what you would put in the book? And, was there anything that you had to leave out because there just wasn't enough, room to fit it all in?
Yeah, I knew, luckily, where I wanted it to start. I wanted it to start with me finding out that we were undocumented, and then I wanted it to end with becoming a citizen. So it was nice to just know what the bookends were, and then really it was with the help of my editor to decide what made sense to keep in, what made sense to take out. A lot of like my tangents about boys I liked in high school and like dating stories.
Riveting.
She's like, I don't really think this is relevant. I was like, I think this is extremely relevant. But so there was things like that we took out, and then there were some things too, like about my family, where I felt like it wasn't really my story to tell. It was more that person's story, and so there were things like that I included in the book. And then as I was going through the editing process, I decided, I'm like, that person should write a memoir about that. It's not really for me to include those things.
You'll all read the book, but perhaps you could whet their appetite with maybe just one of your most favorite anecdotes from the book.
Okay. So
There's so many good ones.
It's really embarrassing. When the book sold on proposal, and one of the chapter titles was how the time I broke my vagina, and it's a story in a chapter about my grandmother who is Muslim. So the chapter is my Muslim grandmother and me, and it was a weekend that my parents were out of town, and I'm very short, so a lot of times when I have to like get something out of a cabinet, I have to climb up on the counter.
I can relate.
And this is so gross. I was on the counter and I jumped down, and I didn't realize that the cabinet below me was open, so I jumped down.
Can you feel it? I can feel it.
I love everyone's reactions. I think I write in the book that if I was a boy, I'd probably be dead.
Right.
So my grandmother, who like didn't speak any English, like I was screaming, and I hadn't moved. I was just like on the counter screaming, and she came into the kitchen and found me that way, and like immediately like started crying and didn't know what to do. And then where's my aunt? My aunt is here. Oh, she called my aunt, and my aunt had to my aunt had to come over and examine my vagina.
That's what you do.
It was so really embarrassing. I guess not so embarrassing that I didn't include it in a book and didn't decide to share it with all of you. But it was just the reason I included it in the book is because there was a lot of tension in my relationship with my grandmother. There was a lot of like cultural differences. There was a lot lost in translation. And it was this moment where, and she lived with us a lot over the course of my childhood and teen years, so there was a lot of like frustration of having her in our space, which as an Iranian, like that's what you do. Like people come and they stay with you for as long as they want, and that's supposed to be okay, and I had a lot of trouble with that. But it was a moment where like I saw how much she cared about me, and it just weirdly, this like hilarious, gross thing kind of solidified our bond, and that's why I decided to include it.
Okay. And she went on to having babies, so there wasn't permanent damage, you know.
It works, guys.
So, you know, there's so many anecdotes like that, super entertaining and heartwarming. But a big part of the book is about immigration and in this political climate and Trump's stance on immigration. It's really just so relevant right now. And I wondered, number one, like, what do you hope the book does in terms of educating people? What do you hope that they come away thinking about undocumented people and immigration? And also, what conversations have you had about your book that have taught you anything about the way that people are viewing immigration now?
I think one of the things that I sort of knew going in, but has become more clear to me now that people have been reading the book, is that people don't really realize how challenging it is to become a legal resident of this country. People are oftentimes surprised when I tell them I was 2 when I moved here and 20 when I was able to get a green card, and how long the process is, and how expensive and stressful. So I hope that just as far as a lot of the misconceptions people have about immigration, particularly because of the current administration, I hope that they see that we're just like anybody else. We were just like a family who loved each other, and parents who were just trying to do the best for their kids, but that it was just a very strenuous process. You hear a lot of times people are like, well, it's fine, come here, but get your green card before you come here, and that's not easy to do when you're living in a country that's in the middle of a war. So just in terms of, I hope people that read this will have a little bit more empathy for the experience of being an immigrant and being an undocumented immigrant. I actually talked to, I'm going to introduce them later, but we have representatives here from Dream Team LA, and I was talking about the book to one of them, and I was talking about how even when you become, like, I'm a citizen now, but there's still this weird anxiety that just doesn't leave you. There's part of me, like, I was just talking to my sister the other day, and we were kind of laughing, but we're like, are we going to get deported when this book comes out? And I was like, well, if we do, it's probably because the book was really successful, because, you know, it was getting on people's radar. But it's true, and Kevin, who I spoke to from Dream Team LA, said, you got a piece of paper, but you didn't get peace of mind. So I was like, I'm going to steal that. That's a great line. But I think, yeah, I mean, that anxiety doesn't necessarily leave you just because you've become a citizen.
Okay, to shift slightly. So your parents, like many young Iranians of the time, had an arranged marriage, which is unique to, I mean, different from most Americans. And I wondered what you thought of that as a teenager.
Come here. This is my dad, everybody. Allie. This is my mom, Shohre.
I should also mention that they met and within a couple of weeks decided to be married, and their love story is one of the most enviable things that I've ever read. I mean, it's so beautiful. So,
really sweet.
you know, in modern dating, you think, well, maybe there's something to it. Maybe we can like create an app that will be more successful than Tinder. But
you might be onto something,
Talia. Yeah, I think so.
I think when I was a teenager, I actually didn't. I mean, I knew that their marriage was arranged, but I used to tell people, like, my parents met and fell in love and got married in 2 weeks. They just, when you know, you know. And, but I did, I mean, and they've always said, too, like, a lot of times when you think arranged marriage, you think they're forced to marry each other, and they've always been pretty adamant about the fact that they were introduced by their parents, which is a lot of what happens in Iran, is like the families kind of come together and make an introduction, hoping that the two people will end up together. So it wasn't the type of thing where they were forced to get married. It was like, we think you guys might like each other. But they did. My dad was visiting Iran he went to school at LSU, so he was visiting for the summer. And they met, and they were both ready, and after 2 weeks, they got married, and my mom left Iran about a month later, I think, and moved to Louisiana. She was 19. One of my favorite stories in the book is her father was... he had to do all this paperwork to get her visa to go to America, and she was hounding him about it, like, why are you taking so long? Like, he was busy with other things, and she kept saying, like, hurry up, get my paperwork done, I want to go to America. And he looked at her and he said, you've been my daughter for 19 years, you've been his wife for a month, like, settle down. Why are you in such a hurry to leave us? But yeah, it was something I was kind of embarrassed about. Like, I didn't tell my friends that part of it. But I've heard other people who've had arranged marriages they've explained it to me in the way of, like, when Americans get married, their relationship is here. And when you get married and have an arranged marriage, your relationship is here, and you work your way up to that. Yeah. And so I do think that it can work. I do think there's something to be said about that.
So I don't mean to continue to make you cry, but because really their marriage, I mean, when you read it, it's just amazing. I wondered, is there anything about their marriage specifically that you really try to apply in your own marriage?
No.
Anything about their partnership?
One of the things my mom has always done was, like, when we were kids, we didn't really eat as a family together very much because my dad always worked really late, and so
she always waited till he got home from work at 9. I know, I'm giving away all this. Oh, sorry. That detail was just so wonderful. Clearly, this wasn't rehearsed.
I'm I'm so kidding. Yes, she always waited for him to have dinner, and they always ate dinner together. And so I try and do that with Brian. Like, even if he's gonna get home late, like, I never eat without him. Like, just that, having that touchstone at night of like eating dinner together, even though most of the time we do it in front of the TV, but just having like that time together, I think for my mom was like more important than her sitting down with us, was getting to sit down with him and connecting with my dad at the end of the day. So that's definitely something that's stuck with me.
Yeah. It's really lovely, those bits. I'm a fan. So being that you're writing about your family, your friends, your exes, what was the process in terms of getting their approval, and what was their reaction in terms of how you depicted various stories about them?
Well, everybody that I wrote about that I still communicate with, I gave them passages from the book that they were in, and asked for them to approve those passages. And then it was really important to me for my mom and my dad and my brother and sister to read the book and get their approval before anyone else saw it, because I say it in the book too, but it's as much their story as it is my story. And so I think, especially my sister, and she was one of the first people that she sent me like a really lovely email to tell me how happy she was with everything. And so that was the most important thing. I didn't want to offend anyone. I didn't want to hurt anyone's feelings. There are a couple people from like high school, like my ex-boyfriend, that I'm like, I don't talk to him anymore. I think we're Facebook friends. I'm kind of embarrassed if he reads it. There's a guy I had like a huge crush on who takes up a lot, like probably too much space in the book. And when I posted about the book on Facebook, he was like, "Oh my gosh, so excited to read it." I was like, I was embarrassed. But yeah, most of my family, I had them read it first and just let me know if everything was okay to keep in there.
Very good. So it wasn't until you were in your 20s that you actually finally got citizenship after many, many years. And I just wondered if that weren't a factor, if you didn't live all of those years with the fear and uncertainty of being deported, is there anything about your life that you would have done differently? Any different decisions that you might have made?
I think the biggest thing is I would have traveled more. I mean, we couldn't leave the country, so like I didn't study abroad in college. I went to NYU summer school because that was like the closest I could get to studying abroad. So I guess I would have tried to see more of the world. I didn't get to vote until 2008, so it was really hard, especially Gore Bush and Kerry Bush. Those were like really tough elections to not get to vote in. My sister did go to Mexico twice without a green card, but with her friends, but I wasn't brave enough to do that. So yeah, I think I just would have been able to see more of the world.
Yeah. Okay. So, everyone has so many memories floating around, stories from their childhood, teen years, all of that. And it's such a unique experience when you have to sit down and create a narrative with all of these that has a through line. And I just wondered, when you finished the book, was there anything about your life that you realized by kind of putting them all to paper that you didn't realize before?
Anything when I... Wait, can you say that again?
Sure. So, I don't think we discussed this.
Yeah, she
gave me areas. So I just wonder, before you sat down to write the book, here are all these floating stories, and you know them and you've told them before, but by putting them down on paper and creating this narrative and this through line, was there anything when you finished the book that you were like, I never really thought about my life in that way, or I never realized that?
I mean, I think because I did in so many ways have like a really happy childhood, and a lot of just like, it was filled with a lot of regular teen angst. I think just seeing the through line of our immigration story made me realize, it really made me realize how much it impacted my parents. Mm-hmm. I think a lot of times as a teenager you're thinking about yourself and how things are impacting you and how hard things were on me. And then when I got to see the big picture of it, I was like, God, this must have been so excruciating for my mom and dad. Just in terms of like the emotional turmoil that they were probably in, but it was also really tough on them financially too. For instance, like if you're undocumented, you can't apply for financial aid to go to college. So they basically had to pay for my sister's education and my education in full, and that was a huge strain on them. But yeah, I mean, I definitely walked away from the experience really grateful for all the sacrifices that they made. So thanks, guys.
Okay, so I guess this will be the final question, then we'll open it up to the audience for any questions that you might have. The 90s, which only happened like 10 years ago, right?
Yeah, totally.
So old. Is almost like a character in this book, obviously, related quite a bit. And I wondered, is there any fad that you wish from the 90s came back?
So many fads! I was just telling my friends that the 90s, I think, is the best decade ever, and it sounds like such an old person thing to say, but I feel like it's the last, like, super idyllic time. It was pre-9/11. Mm-hmm. You could still go to the gate at the airport without a boarding pass. There was no Facebook. There was hardly any internet yet. There was no iPhones. The music was really good. The fashion was really good. The movies were good. Come on, Emily. We can debate this. I would say Doc Martens, but my sister told me today that they are back in style.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Rock those Doc Martens. Yeah.
But I also really enjoyed the fad. I don't know if any other ladies did this, but wearing nylons or tights under cutoffs. Cut-off jean shorts, because I don't really like to show my legs, but I really like cut-off. So if I could bring that fad back, I would.
You could.
Yeah, I guess
you could be a
guys.
trendsetter.
Yeah, you heard it here first. It's back.
Does anyone have any questions? All right.
Who's your favorite cousin?
Oh, it's a loaded question.
That's my cousin.
Watch it.
Clearly, the one who asked the question is my favorite cousin.
This cousin is her favorite.
Okay. There's a lot of cousins here. Everyone, actually, it seems like I know a lot of people. They're all my cousins.
So, did you enjoy the experience of writing this book more than your first book? And if so, do you see yourself writing more sort of satirical material, comedy, and fiction?
I think it was easy. I found this experience much easier because I knew it was just figuring out what stories I wanted to tell. It wasn't figuring out the stories. I think fiction was a little bit more challenging just in terms of like plotting and everything like that. But yeah, I used to have a blog that I don't keep up very much called The Blow Off. And it was all like relationship stories and breakup stories, and I have a lot of fun like getting to share. I feel like it sounds so narcissistic, but getting to share an experience and then having other people say like, I felt the same way. Like there's a connection there I think you have with nonfiction that you don't have as much with fiction. So I would like to do this more. So yes.
Well, you could choose, but one. We'll go ahead.
What made you decide, like, I'm going to be a writer and fully pursue that without hesitation?
I don't know if you guys can hear in the back, but what made her decide to become a writer?
Well, I was always like a storyteller when I was a little kid. Before I could write, like my parents shared the story, but I had like a little notebook that I just made loops because that's what I thought cursive looked like. And then I had a story that like anytime people would come over, I'd be like, oh, I wrote this book, I want to tell you about it. But I would tell it exactly the same every time. So I think there's a part of me that always wanted to be a storyteller. But there's a section in the book about when I was 15, I really wanted to be an actress. I feel like everybody goes through that phase, and I made my poor dad, who like worked 6 days a week on his day off, drive me to San Francisco for acting classes, and then while I was in acting classes, I realized I was terrible at acting, and I also realized it's not fun to do things you're not good at, so I decided to focus more on writing, and then took the executive path for a while, and then was always writing on the side.
You, sir, in the back.
That's a really good question. I hadn't thought about that, but now I'm going to be the best mom ever.
God.
Planning to send a signed copy to Mr. President?
Is Sara going to send a signed copy to Mr. President?
Fuck that guy. That guy can pay for a copy. I will say that the hardest part about doing like some of the revisions, because so much of everything that was going on politically, we had to go back and like change things. And at one part of the book, I had written like how amazing it was to get to vote for the first female president, and then I had to write first female presidential nominee, and then it was so painful to have to go back and write President Trump. Was so yeah.
Over in the corner.
Yeah, I definitely found out a lot, especially about my grandmothers and my uncle who passed away before I was born. That was part of the motivation too, is like seeing my parents and my aunts and uncles getting a little older and like really realizing that there are so many questions about our family that I hadn't asked them yet. A lot of the book too has excerpts from my diaries from high school, and that was really interesting because like you remember things a certain way, and then I would find the entry about that thing and realize that it happened actually a little differently. So that helped keep me a little bit accurate and honest about how things really took place.
Did you always have this title for the book? And you talk a little about how the cover came together?
Yeah, I did always have the title Americanized when the proposal went out. That's what it was called. And the cover actually, they sent me a completely different cover initially, and it felt a little bit. I mean, the book is a young adult memoir, and it's geared. The writing is geared toward teen readers, but it felt a little bit juvenile the way the cover looked, and it was the same idea with me sitting in a chair, but the design was completely different. And so they decided to age it up a little bit, and then I'd actually asked them to incorporate mosaics because it is something that's very iconic to being Iranian. And so, yeah, and then that's what they sent me. So you don't get that much input in the cover, but thank you.
Go ahead.
Darling, first of all, I'm so beyond proud of you. And I wanted to ask you, I couldn't sleep last night, and I was thinking about your whole family.
This is my cousin. I don't know this guy. Super weird. I don't know why you were thinking about my family. I don't know you.
I was thinking how amazingly you kids all turned out, how successful you are, how wonderful you are, and now in the perspective of all that you've been through and how hard it was, what happened there? What happened that, despite all the stress and the tension, all the things, besides just the, this particular green card issue, that whole issue, that you guys turned out, and I was thinking in my head, my two answers were like, A, your parents always seem to love each other so much, and B, that they seem to just let you guys just kind of, the three of you guys, I mean her and her sister and brother, kind of just grow and individuate into your own beings without really any pressure. And was I right, or
this is really interesting for someone who doesn't know us. You really know. Yeah, I mean, I think a lot of it was definitely my parents, but also I should add that like none of us got deported. We did, the situation did end up resolving itself. So I think that was a big part of it. There was a lot of scary moments towards the end, but we were really lucky that we did end up getting green cards and we did all become citizens. A lot of people are having the opposite experience right now. So I think that was a really huge part of it. And I think too, like I say in the book, in the portion that I read, like my dad was like, no, it's fine, everything's fine, don't worry about it. I think that was always like his attitude when we were growing up, and I don't think he really felt that way, but I think that helped us stay calm.
Go ahead.
You talked about remembering things differently when you were reading your diary. I'm not Sara's cousin, by the way. So was there anything, and you also talked about kind of consulting with your family, getting their approval for passages. Was there anything, like any stories or instances that you consulted with them, or like collective memory, and that actually when you talked to them about it, they corrected you, or it actually went differently than you recall?
Yeah, one of the things I needed like a lot of clarity on was a lot of people don't know this, but if you apply for a green card, they've changed the law a little bit now, but we applied through my uncle. Well, this actually still applies, but if one of your kids turns 21 before you actually get a green card, they call it aging out, and that means they've aged out of the application and they essentially have to start completely from scratch. And they've changed it now where, because the wait times are so long, that if you are applying through a parent, that you won't age out, but if you are applying through like a sibling, like we did through my mom's brother, it still applies. So my sister was literally like a week away from aging out of our application when we ended up getting, when she ended up getting a green card, and that was a crazy time because it was literally like down to the wire, and she was away at school, so she had no idea any of it was happening, and just having to really like talk to my parents and say, because it's so sad how much of my diary entries were about boys and what I bought at the mall. So I didn't have that much information on it. I remembered it, but I wanted to know like the exact play-by-play. So that was really helpful to talk to my parents about. Hi.
I'm curious, what advice do you have? Because I would think you're a role model to undocumented teens that are now dealing with anxiety. These are different times. What words of advice do you have for them? Or if you speak to them, what do you say in this day and age?
Yeah, it's hard because I did growing, because the 90s were so amazing, guys. It was a different person was the president. Yeah, it wasn't as scary as it is now, I think. Towards the end of the book, there's like concrete advice that I give that I consulted with an immigration lawyer for, like certain things, like if an ICE agent knocks on your door, you don't have to let them in unless they slip a search warrant under the door, like certain things like that I feel like people need to just know their rights. But it's hard to, give advice with things being so unpredictable right now. But essentially it's just like, keep hope alive. It sounds so cheesy, but I feel like that was a big part of it for my family, is just like, stay hopeful, and don't break the law either, because that is the fastest way they're trying to get people out of the country. They say criminals, but it's like a simple DUI could get you deported, so you just have to be extra careful too, unfortunately. Sounds kind of bleak, but... Okay. Oh, hold on. Jihan?
I just had a question about whether or not you struggled with how honest to be, or how honest you had to be, and what you wanted to share versus keep to yourself. I'm just wondering how you made those decisions.
Yeah, it was a little challenging. Like, there's a section where I talk about like one of the worst fights I had with my parents, and that was probably the part that I felt like I needed to be really honest, but I didn't want to make them relive an experience that was hard for all of us. I just felt like in order to, I felt like it would be a cop-out to write it and not be honest about everything, so I tried to be as honest as possible, and there's a lot of like super, super embarrassing diary excerpts, but I decided like I have to include them because that's the things that I was worried about. So I feel like for the most part, except for stuff that I felt like just didn't feel right telling it, because it, like for instance, like I had a cousin who came out of the closet to our family, and it was kind of a difficult time to see how the older generation responded to that versus the younger generation in our family, and it has a happy ending. We were all at his wedding a few years ago, but that was something that I was like, that's really his story, so that was the challenge, more or less about being honest, but like what was really appropriate for me to write about.
We'll take one more question. The stripes?
I'm sure you overheard people in restaurants or even people who don't know that you came here undocumented, and people say, do you respond, or if you do, what do you say? Especially if it's someone you know, people in the writer's room or
Nobody in the iZombie writers room would ever say anything like that.
We're vicious.
Yeah, I don't know if I've specifically ever had the experience of somebody saying something without them knowing that I was an immigrant, but you definitely hear a lot of like, well, you're already here. That's okay that you're already here. It's like all the other people. And I think for me, it doesn't matter that I'm already here. Like, I went through that experience, and I feel like I have so much empathy for people that are currently going through it. And so that's really, like, I guess this book is sort of my response to that, is like, you don't have the opportunity to really explain to somebody like exactly how hard it was. So, and I don't know, maybe the book is preaching to the choir, like maybe no one's going to read it that hates immigrants, but I hope that it like teaches some empathy, and it makes people realize how challenging it is. I'll share an anecdote actually, because like I had this amazing conversation with my mother-in-law on the drive over here, and she was somebody that like grew up in a really small town, probably wasn't exposed to many immigrants, definitely wasn't exposed to many Iranians until Brian and I started dating. And she said on the phone while I was here, she's like, these are her words, not mine, so I feel okay sharing them. She just said it's awe-inspiring for people who are going through this, and for people who have gone through this, to see how hard it is. And that really meant a lot to me, because I know that she hasn't had the exposure, and so I hope that more people like her read it and realize like, wow, this is a really difficult thing, and I should have more empathy for people that are going through it.
Yeah. Thank you.
Really quick. No. We're not done yet. Sorry. I know everyone's really eager to eat food and drink some champagne, but I really wanted to introduce Dream Team LA, who is here tonight. Kevin is going to say a few words. They are a group that does a ton of advocacy for DACA, and they have a table back there with pamphlets, and they're taking donations if anyone feels compelled to give. But I really wanted them to have the last word this evening. So, Kevin, please.
Thank you, everyone. My name is Kevin Solis. I'm with Dream Team Los Angeles. Dream Team LA is a group of undocumented youth activists who are advocating for immigration reform. So let me unpack that for you. Undocumented youth people such as Sara, who came to the country by their parents, usually without papers, or visa overstays, or otherwise in this country without papers. And we've been advocating for immigration reform for several years now. And as I see your family here, it's so interesting. I commented to you that after reading the book, I wasn't sure how much I knew about you, but I knew everything about your family. You know, Kia and Sammy, the original rebel without a green card, and your parents. And it's so important that the media calls us dreamers, but you have to remember that it's your parents that are the original dreamers, the ones that took a chance to flee a country in turmoil. They didn't speak the language. They came here for a better life. There were reasons they had to leave their country. And so these people are the original dreamer, the parents. There are two members of Dream Team LA here who are DACA recipients. We have Jose, we have Berenice, we have our, thank you. Oh, and we have Liliana, thank you. We have a table back there with some stickers we made, and you can ask us information about our advocacy, and I have some videos of activisms we did. I'll tell you really quickly that when Sara contacted me through our website, I don't think she knew that we were the group that was behind DACA and DAPA. So the Deferred Action for Childhood Arrivals, which lets people apply for a temporary deferment of status, that was a policy that we wrote. That was a policy that we challenged President Obama with. Thank you. Thank you. And we called it administrative relief at the time. We really cornered President Obama, and a lot of people think it's something he did. He was really pressured in his 2012 election. We then advocated for the policy of DAPA, which was for parents. That was not enforced because it went to the Supreme Court and got tied up in a 4-4 decision when the Republicans held a Supreme Court nomination hostage for over a year. But what we're doing right now, we have a fight for a Clean Dream Act, which would allow young people brought to the country as undocumented a pathway to a citizenship, because right now there is no pathway to citizenship for a lot of them. And so we want this bill to be free of a border wall that no one wants. We want it free from ending family-based migration, which is what you use to get status, so you wouldn't be here if there was no family-based migration. And we do not want to end the visa lottery, which ensures that people from, shithole countries are allowed to come to America. This is the American dream, so you can join us on our advocacy. And again, I want to thank Sara for having us here and hosting us. Thank you very much.
Thank you, everyone, for coming. I know it's really hard. It's a Tuesday night, and it's just really nice to see so many friendly, lovely faces. I love you guys. And thank you, Talia, for being amazing.
And let's once again thank Sara for her wonderful work. So, yeah, congratulations.
You've been listening to the Skylight Books author reading series. Don't forget, you can listen to this and all of our other great podcasts at skylightbooks.com. Thanks again for stopping by, and we hope to see you soon.